Mr. Speaker, Bangladesh national and illegal immigrant Shaqqa Islam was convicted in 2008 of promoting sexual performance of a child. After he served his sentence in New York, an immigration judge ordered Islam to be deported back to where he came from. But Bangladesh wouldn't take back their criminal deviant. They did what many countries do, delayed until by law he was released back onto the streets of America. As other countries are well aware, U.S. law does not allow indefinite incarceration. 6 weeks after his release, Islam struck again at another victim. On a cool evening in November in New York, 73-year-old grandmother Lois Decker, a mother, a grandmother, retired school cook, a Sunday school teacher, was walking home from the grocery store. Islam stalked her and followed her into her home and murdered the defenseless grandmother. But stealing her life just wasn't enough for him. After Islam left her to die, he stole her car and took off in the darkness of the night. The thief, however, wrecked her car. 2 good Samaritans saw the crash and mistakenly stopped to help him. Then, being the worthless outlaw he is, he tried to steal their car as well. More witnesses intervened and prevented him from stealing that vehicle, but he still fled the scene in yet another stolen vehicle. In June, a judge in New York sentenced Islam to life, where he belongs. Mr. Speaker, currently there are thousands of criminal illegals in our country, just like Islam, that have been sent to prison, ordered deported, but their native countries stall, delay, and eventually refuse to take back their outlaws. Many of those criminals are roaming around American streets looking for more crime and malicious mischief. There is more. Ashton Klein McMurray, a 16-year-old with palsy, when he came in contact with another do-bad. One evening, he was walking home from a football game in Massachusetts when he was ambushed, beaten, stabbed, and murdered by Long Hong, an illegal from Cambodia. Hong was convicted of manslaughter, sent to prison, and then ordered deported. But Hong never went back to his native country of Cambodia because they wouldn't take him. Vietnamese citizen Binh Loc was convicted of armed robbery of a Chinese restaurant in California in 1996. He was sent to prison for 10 years and then deported back to Vietnam. But once again, Vietnam would not take him back. So in March of this year, Luck was running loose in San Francisco and murdered 5 people. Mr. Speaker, these are tragic cases that occurred in our nation. There should be consequences for countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Cambodia who failed to take back their lawfully deported criminals. The blood of Miss Decker and these other victims are not only the fault of Islam and the other felons, but also the fault of those countries that refuse to take their outlaw citizens back. Some of the most offending countries are Cuba, Pakistan, Vietnam, Jamaica, and yes, our good buddies, the Chinese. So what should we do? We should do 2 things. 1, U.S. law should allow civil suits against these offending countries for damages without any caps on compensation. And 2, freeze legal visas to nations that refuse to take back their criminals. Mr. Speaker, did you know a similar law already exists in the U.S., but the State Department won't enforce the law for supposedly diplomatic reasons? According to Secretary Napolitano, DHS and the State Department are working with these offending countries to resolve these matters, that being the folks that are getting murdered in the U.S. So I've introduced legislation that removes the uncertainty and the weak knees of bureaucrats and requires the State Department to follow through with visa sanctions against these countries. Time to play a little diplomatic hardball with these nations. After all, Americans are dying because these lawfully deported illegals don't go back where they come from. It's time to make these crooks and misfits the problem of their home country rather than continue to remain our problem. Otherwise, more grandmothers are going to die in America. And that's